come on in. Welcome to it. If you're here and I'm not alone, say hi in the chat. Please, please, please. And we will get underway with this class in just a moment. Yay! Hi, Patty! Woot! I trust everything is working on that end. You can see me, you can hear me. I hope. We will get going here in just a second. Hi, Eva. Yay. I think I said this last time, but I mean it again this time. I really miss teaching the live classes. I love being able to do this on the internet. And as long as I continue to teach these classes, I think I want to do them here on the internet. Hi, Darlene. Yay. Thank you, Patty. But I also want to figure out somehow how to go back or forward, I guess, right? As she turns. Forward into teaching live again, whatever that needs to look like to be safe and ethical and healthy about it. It's, kind of not really a conversation. Thanks, guys. It's kind of not really a conversation right now as we're seeing another spike of COVID across the country. Not a COVID expert, not trying to tell you stuff. Go watch the news. But, I was really hoping that I was going to be able to get together with people here in the Seattle area and do something for Samhain, perhaps even at Mortlake and Company, where we were teaching the classes in 2018 and 2019. And it's just not realistic right now. It really isn't. And I'm bummed. I'm mad about it. Put your goddamn masks on. Stop going on vacations if you don't have to. All right, take a little vacation, but just one. Yeah. So hopefully, our country will, mature a little bit. Fingers crossed. Not holding my breath, but I got my fingers crossed. And we will knock COVID on its ass as it deserves to be knocked out, right? And get back to being able to hang out and do cool stuff with each other. But whenever that occurs, I do intend to continue to teach these online because I really, really like it. I don't know, there's something about it. All right, let's get some preambles out of the way so we can get on with the show in a minute. It's already 5 minutes after, oh my God. If this is your first time here, welcome and thank you for joining for this class. I encourage you to light a candle, maybe light some incense, or maybe get some essential oils to sniff while we work through class. Maybe grab a beverage for yourself and a snack. Let's stay hydrated and fueled while we learn, right? You might also grab a journal. You might grab some art supplies. You might also grab some magical tools like your natal chart, if you practice astrology, or a tarot deck, or other oracular tools like runes, or other divinatory systems that you like to work with, and have your tools ready to go for referencing, for asking questions, for meditating on ideas as they come up in the class. But also, this is a 2-hour lecture. That's a lot of time for folks to just sit and listen to something. And so fold your laundry, get your dishes done, cook some dinner while we're talking. Like, you know how you learn best, so you do what's good for you. This is recorded, so you can always come back and watch this later on YouTube, or if you are one of my patrons, you can download the video and study it more intensely later on. Maybe there's certain parts of this class that are really intriguing to you, and you can go back and listen to those. So just that. Did everybody have a fantastic week? Oh my God, it's in 2021. Totally fucking hell. Like, what the... Oh, 2021 has definitely been trying me. I'm like, 2020, I was like, okay, I get it. You're 2020. All right, the double judgment. Right? That's the 20th card in the major arcana of tarot is the judgment card. So I very much was like 2020. I don't know, but 2021 I was like, oh, it'll be fine. I don't know what I was thinking, but yeah, it's been a lot. I saw a meme the other day that I thought was really cute. That was like 2020, this is hell. 2021, how do we make hell cozy? How do we make it cute? And I think that that's fairly apt. um, as we move towards 610, we will actually get started with the material proper at 610. As I said before, if this is your first time joining us, welcome. And thank you for joining me and us for this class. Welcome to the Mabon Second Harvest Witches Thanksgiving 2021 live stream. My name is Megan Angus. I am a self-taught eclectic pagan, heathen, and witch, and a variety of other things that I cannot say on air. I have been offering this work from unceded ancestral Duwamish territory known as Seattle. And I've been studying paganism for over 35 years, 37, almost 38 years to be exact. And these classes are born out of that exploration. I have learned things, and then I have learned totally diametrically opposed stuff. I have learned histories, and then archaeologists have blown my mind with brand new histories. And so this work is definitely kind of a product of that evolution of my understanding of what paganism is in the world, and how I might work with it, and then ultimately how I might, like, I guess, hold up a lamp for others to find their paths. Because I have no idea how you're going to find God, but I can show you the, like, thousands of ways that other people have done it. I do, however, also see a really profound disconnect between the magic and the science that I think pagans have been aware of, that people have been aware of for far longer and at a far greater depth than we currently give our ancestors credit for. I also see a pretty deep disconnect between pagans and their historical ancestry, as well as a disconnect between modern pagans and other spiritual groups. So these classes are meant to address that in some measure. I don't know it all. No one person does, thank God. Des. And I do get stuff wrong. I mispronounce things occasionally. It's not for lack of trying. Certainly not out of a point of disrespect. And I always appreciate when folks send in a correction or a suggestion or a why did you reference this with that kind of thing. Yeah, it's good stuff. And so before we get into the class proper, let me blast you with the shill. My producer / manager is very happy at this point because I'm remembering to do this part. If you would like to work along with me and us, the slowly but weirdly growing collective of people that are working with this material, if you would like to work with me and us over the next 6 weeks, join my Patreon. I put out a weekly podcast detailing our journey through each season with a heavy emphasis on lunar cycles. What am I talking about? There's a heavy emphasis on everything. We cover the pagan and global holidays for the week. That podcast is therapy for me. I really love doing it. I'm really stoked that it's been getting some cool response from the people. Feels like folks like it too. And I should say that folks that are subbed at the Venus level on my Patreon, which is $9 a month and higher, will have access to the recording of this, which, yes, is here for free on YouTube, but if you want to download the audio only or the video, you are welcome to do so through Patreon. You will also have access to a handcrafted artisanal, okay, uh, 20-ish page PDF of the workbook that we will be referencing to throughout class. There is a 7-week calendar containing literally hundreds of holidays, past and present, as well as the heliacal rising of fixed stars and all of the lunar phases, the folder is up and ready for download. I actually managed to get that done today, which I'm kind of surprised, but you know, good job, Megan. A majority of the slides that we're going to use in class and some of the other reference material is up in that folder as well for you guys. And please hit the like button on this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already. Is there anything else I needed to say about the Patreon folder? No, I don't think so. All right, let's get into it. Let's do this. Okie dokie, artichokes. Okay, it's Mabon, y'all. And as I like to say every year, did you feel the shift? Did you feel that moment where it was like suddenly, you know, a moment ago, we're running barefoot on the beach and we're sweaty and it's hot and it's hard to sleep because the heat doesn't go away at night. And then all of a sudden, that chillier air starts to show up at night. There's a little bit of dew on the ground in the mornings. I guess that sort of depends on where you are in the northern hemisphere right now. But yeah, there's that shift in the air, that shift in the weather. And that is very, very indicative for us of the metaphysical work that we are going to be doing in this season. So let's talk about it. It is Mabon season. And this is second harvest. As we talked about in the last class, Lughnasadh is the first harvest, aka the grain harvest. And again, this is for folks that are up here in the northern hemisphere. For everybody down in the southern hemisphere, we are stepping into spring equinox. We love the paradox, don't we? But at Lughnasadh season, our last Sabbat, that was the first harvest, aka the grain harvest. We are now coming into Mabon season, which is the second harvest, aka the fruit harvest, or fruit and veg harvest. This is also called Witches' Thanksgiving because of that. And the most common elements, I would say, of this holiday are, you know, really surrounding these ideas of abundance and these ideas of fruition, like a massive piece of work coming to a climax or coming to some type of a conclusion. And then the after that moment. Okay. Before we get too far along in the folklore and the symbolism and stuff like that, I want to take a moment to talk about the science of what is happening for this Sabbat, because it matters, because I'm pretty sure our ancestors totally understood this stuff, and not because aliens taught it to them, not because Enoch came and explained some shit, although maybe that's fine, but because they actually paid attention to what was happening in the sky and the planet around them. They were, you know, in touch with stuff and sort of present. That's just my opinion, but I hold it dearly. So let's look at some science stuff. This is our sun and a not to scale depiction of our planet in its orbit around the sun. There's, you know, technically a lot of things wrong with this diagram, but what it gets right is it's explaining here the tilt of our planet, and where on our globe sunlight is falling. And this phenomena is part of why we have shorter days and longer nights in part of the year, shorter nights and longer days in the other part of the year, and what that whole thing is all about. So this is us in our orbit moving around the sun, and as you can see, the light falls on different parts of the planet, and it's always a semicircle, but where that semicircle falls is different. And you can see the globe that's in the bottom left-hand corner is the autumnal equinox. And so that is us kind of moving around, being exposed to different types of, or different amounts of sunlight. But this this diagram is okay. I think this one helps to understand it a little bit better. So you can see here that we have up at the top the June solstice, aka summer solstice. And for us here in the northern hemisphere, that's when we are having our longest days and our shortest nights. And you can see how much of the northern hemisphere is getting blasted with sunlight. If we look all the way up to that top line where the Arctic Circle is, you can see that entire circle is covered in light. And we know that at summer solstice, the sun really just doesn't go down. If you are in the Arctic Circle, it's perpetual twilight / daytime for, you know, what I think it's 6 weeks, I think, or maybe longer than that in the most extreme places. And then if we look down in the right-hand corner, we see the December solstice, aka winter solstice or Yule. And again, we've got the equator, we've got the North Pole up at the top, the Arctic Circle, and again, you can see where the hot spot of the sunlight is hitting. It's significantly further down the globe. And so here is our, you know, a graphic depiction basically of our short days. And then if we look at the globe on the left-hand corner, this is what it looks like when we are here at the fall or autumnal equinox, as well as when we are at the vernal or spring equinox. It's equal light, as just as much as hitting the top of the globe as is hitting the bottom. It's coming straight on at us. And really, the hot spot is right at the equator. It's right in the middle of the planet. So this is just to give you a little bit of science and diagramical... Is that a word? It is now. Illustrative, sure, information to be able to visualize in your mind what is happening with our sunlight and this whole day, night, long, short gig that we're talking about. If that is news to you, you probably went to public school in America, and that's okay. But yes, that is what we're doing here at Mabon, is we are witnessing the last of the days that are longer than the nights. And once we cross over this moment, the nights will officially be longer than the days, leading up to winter solstice, where we will have the longest nights and the shortest days. And then we will slowly balance that back out again until we get to spring equinox, equal night, equal day. And then the days are longer than the nights, leading up to summer solstice. And so we can see that here on the planet. Now, one of the about this, or look at this phenomenon image, or this shape, is called an alemna. And this is the shape that our sun orbit throughout a year. If you were to track the sunrise or the sunset, or really the easiest way to make this shape in the sky is to track noon of every single day. Where is the sun at every, just a second. But what we're really interested in here for this shape in particular is the bar that is in the lower 2/3, that black and white bar that's very dark in the lower 2/3 of this. That really is the mark of the equinoxes. If you look on the left side, you can see the words February and then March, and right here towards the end of March is where that bar is. And of course, that's spring equinox. That's when we have that. And then we move up to the top of the diagram and then back down again. And as we come back down the right-hand side, we see September, and right towards the end of September, boom, we have that bar again. And that's our autumnal equinox that we're celebrating right now. So again, this is the pattern that's made in the sky by the sun. if we are looking at it, at the same time every day over the course of a year. Let me show you this in a photograph. Here is that. Now, the reason why this is tilted off to the side rather than straight up and down is because this person took it closer to sunset. If they had taken it closer to sunrise, it would be pointing at an angle in the opposite direction. If they took it at noon, it would be straight up and down. This is a three-dimensional diagram of the pattern that our sun makes in our sky as we orbit around it in our goofy lopsided orbit with our planetary tilt and our oval-shaped orbit that we're not exactly, the sun isn't exactly at the center of it, and all of those things lining up creates this shape. Now, what I think is really, really interesting about that is that one of our deep metaphors that we work with at this time of year is the Underworld Journey. And again, looking at this diagram, once we pass really summer solstice, but lunisod season is actually what we're passing, and we go through September, and then we pass through that bar or that gateway, as it were, at the end of September. It's all down, down, down to the very bottom or lowest place that the sun is going to be in the sky, and then slowly February and March. So we see truly that the sun itself it is heading down, and finding itself at its lowest points that it's going to be at in the sky before it heads back up again. I love that. Also, side note, if you have been paying attention in other classes, we have looked at these photos before, but we have seen these shapes before. This twisty infinity symbol shape, right? First off, it's clearly similar to an infinity symbol, so we have that. But we've seen this shape in some other places. I'll give you a clue if you are wondering, but you've been watching along throughout the year. Go back and look at some of the characters that we work with at the end of spring who wear interesting hats, and see if you can't find a shape there that is similar to this shape. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so moving on, this is what's happening in our sky. This is what's happening to our planet with our sunlight. All that good stuff. Now, have people been tracking this? You better believe they have. We talked a lot about these sites back in spring as well. So, some of this is going to be old hat for some of you guys. But this is the temple of Kukul. This is Kukul Plaza, Chichen Itza in South America. This is Incan, and at the spring equinox and the fall equinox, with sunrise and sunset, the movement of the sun as it rises or sets actually makes this ribbon of light appear, and it actually shimmers up and down the steps, or up and down this ramp. And at the bottom, you can see there is a giant serpent head. And this is the great feathered serpent of Incan belief. Why am I at a loss for this god's name? I have it written down somewhere. Sorry, but Kukulkan is one of the names that this deity is known by. But this is the great feathered serpent. And again, if you've been following along with the podcast, we've been talking a lot about serpents. We've been talking a lot about serpents and dragons. And so here again is a giant serpent of light rippling up and down this beautiful temple. Also, this is a pillar stone in Machu Picchu. And on both of this casts a shadow at noon every single day of the year, except on the equinoxes, and there is no shadow. You can look this up at Machu Picchu. This is Newgrange, aka Bruna Boyne. This site is approximately 4,000 years old. And this site absolutely aligns with the spring and fall equinox. It has a couple of different markers for that, and this is a diagram of the interior passage of Brunaboyne or Newgrange. And what happens is the light comes right down that passage and illuminates carved stones on the inside. This is a phenomenon that we see in many different Western European and European, I guess I should just say, megalithic sites. That there's a deep tunnel that you have to go into the back to, and then there's carvings in the back that are hit with sunlight on a particular day of the year. 3200 BC. I had to look it up. I couldn't leave it alone. This is oh my gosh. Sorry guys. Almendres Cromlech in Portugal. This is approximately 6000 BCE. This is a massive site. We've also talked about this place. It marks everything. Fixed star risings, the equinoxes, the solstices. It's absolutely huge, and it's built on this incredible, the side of a hill, basically, where the land just sweeps out away at the bottom of it. And so there's absolutely no visual obstructions whatsoever. It's really an incredible site. And one of the really interesting things about this site is that some of the stones here, like the stone that you see in the lower left-hand corner, have relatively flat tops on them. They actually have little divots and lines and things like that carved into the surface of them, and archaeologists, or I guess I should say astroarchaeologists, or archaeoastronomers, believe that folks would actually do micro measurements by placing rocks or stones or some type of marker on top of these to actually be able to measure down to what astronomers would call the seconds, not just the degrees. So this is like I said, approximately 6000 BCE, aka 8,000 years ago, people had that shit figured out. That stuff. Sorry for the curse words, Mom. Yeah, pretty intense, pretty cool stuff. Again, back to my whole, I think we knew more, and I think we understood more way earlier than we give our ancestors credit for. This is an overhead of Almendres, and once again, what do we see here? A big oval and a smaller circle, aka an oval. The diagrams at the top are what archaeologists believe were the original settings, and then what we have today is what we see down below. And yeah, there's just so much here. It so closely mimics our orbit around our sun, because it is a lopsided circle and it's not perfectly centered. And then we have, the dual thing here, that very similar to that shape that the sun is making in the sky. All of that good stuff. Pretty cool. This is Menagera. I'm absolutely in love with this site. This is in Malta. This is approximately 3600 BCE, so approximately 5600 years ago. And there is incredibly detailed carvings here. You can see, if you look closely around the doorway and the menhirs that are on either side of this, there's all these tiny little dots that have been drilled into the stone, or carved into the stone. And this is a really incredible site. This is the site from overhead, and in its present day condition. These three chambers line up with the summer solstice, the fall and spring equinox in the center, and then the winter solstice on the right. summer solstice on the left. And again, this is a structure wherein you have these rooms, but ultimately the sun is sort of passing through these chambers. These all would have had roofs on them in theory, and striking sort of the dark heart in the very back. Side note, because I am the queen of tangents, one of the things that really blows me away about the shape of these structures is that they look exactly like the letter omega to me in Greek. Are they that? I have no idea. I might totally be projecting that onto this. But they look exactly like that. And they also look like booby goddesses. And they're also ovals. Ah! It's kind of like this, right? Again, am I projecting all of that onto this? Totally possible. But isn't it interesting how we keep seeing the same shapes and the same signs and the same symbols over and over and over again when we follow the rabbit hole, right? When we go down and do the work. This is a diagram of that Menagera solar temple, and you can see here, summer solstice on the left, the equinoxes straight down the middle, and winter solstice on the right. There's that. Pretty dang cool, ancestors. Sheesh. Sheesh. And then, of course, we couldn't possibly talk about megalithic sites without mentioning the grande dame of megalithic sites herself, Nabta Playa in southern Egypt. This site marks the summer and winter solstice, the spring and fall equinoxes, as well as a bunch of other stuff. It marks the heliacal risings of many fixed stars like Dube, Orion's Belt, Sirius, and as we talked about earlier this year, some of the most recent digs in this place have discovered what might be a sculpture with a cow or a cow's head. And if we stretch forward in time, several thousand years, we see Egyptians honoring a cow-headed goddess named Hathor, who is a massive provider and protector goddess. She kind of, birthed the world. No big deal. Nabta Playa, for those who are keeping score, was built approximately 7,500 BCE. So yes, kids, 9,500 years ago, we have evidence of our ancestors doing astronomy. They were doing an astronomy right there in the middle of the dang desert, you guys. What the heck? And something that I really want to note about that is when we talk about a civilization building a site like this 9,500 years ago, it wasn't like Bob woke up on a Tuesday and then by Thursday Nabta Playa existed. There was question mark number of years of that civilization working with these concepts, testing things, right? Trying out a hypothesis. Does the sun rise in this point every time? Does the star rise in this point every time? And those are things that only can be determined over the course of years, months in some cases, but years in most cases. If we're talking about the heliacal rising of a fixed star, that happens one time a year. That's not something we can wind the sky back and go check, right? So when we talk about a civilization creating a site like this 9,500 years ago, and by some interesting records of history, civilization started 10,000 years ago. So you're telling me that these cats came up with all of the science and all of the astronomical understanding in a course of 500 years, along with everything else that would have to happen for a civilization to be able to have the time and the space to make a site like this? Get out of here. So, yeah. So I love sites like this because they just light me up when I think back into time and back into history of all of the many groups that would have been working with information and studying this stuff and passing that information down generation to generation to share, to ultimately gain understanding of what is happening to us. And is there any way that we can possibly predict what's going to happen? And these wizard scientists were like, actually, yeah, we can predict some of this stuff. Turns out, Janet came up with this incredible idea. Like, put a rock down, see if it still matches in a year. It totally worked. you know, TLDR, Bezos is on Mars. I know, it's not good, but look, we still have time, people. We can fix this. Okay. Let's move on to actual witchcraft. Wait, this has been actual witchcraft, but let's move on to some more other different witchcraft. Like, what are we doing these days, and what have people been doing these days for Mabon? So, we have this whole equal night, equal day thing, right? And also happening here in the Northern Hemisphere is this massive, massive harvest coming to fruition on the physical plane. So there has been this big push of labor across the high, hot part of the year, all through, really in some places, depending on how close you are to the equator, the harvest season actually starts sometime in June. Some of those grains are ready to go right around Litha season. So all through Litha, all through July, all through August and Lunisod season, and here into September, there is this incredible multi-month, multi-regional push to harvest in this incredible amount of abundance that the goddess Mother Earth is providing for people. So there's easy living, lots of sleeping outdoors holidays, lots of sky watching holidays because the weather generally is beautiful, and there's free food everywhere, so we don't have to work too hard at life, right? It kind of sets the stage for a lot of ancient cultures in what they thought of as ancient times, that there was this Arcadia at one point, that there was this sort of heavenly golden era to humanity's existence on this planet, where there was no war, there was no fighting, there was no territories or ownership of everything, and that we all just lived peacefully side by side. Possible, probable, honestly. And so a little bit of that energy is coming in for us with Mabon season. A little bit of that energy of a golden era or a golden time. A lot of that is very romanticized too, though. And harvests are not just about pulling in good things. They're also sometimes about pulling in our consequences of things that we've done. We'll get to that in a minute. But generally speaking, and when we look back over the last, several thousand years, what we see from our distant ancestors and our more recent ancestors is lots and lots and lots of partying, lots of feasting. The main body of that work is done by this point in the year. And again, depending on how close you are to the equator, it could have been done for a minute now. September can really be this time of ease and relaxation amongst a lot of the ancient civilizations and ancient practices. Feasting, obviously, a really, really, really big deal. And there's lots and lots and lots of traditions around feasting and harvesting and what foods get eaten in what order and all of that stuff. So, nearly everything that's seasonal for this time of year has a magical quality to it. Blackberries and apples have a very magical quality. Goose is absolutely considered a dish that not only is seasonal, but is good luck and eaten for prosperity. Bannock is another one that's really popular. And so... there's all these celebratory traditions of harvest and of abundance and witnessing this incredible outflow of production and result from all of this work that humans have been doing, but all of this work also that the goddess, Mother Earth, has been doing over the course of the year. So that is a big part of what's happening with a lot of pagan practices. And we see that in the tradition of the corn dolly. This is probably the most popular folk tradition associated with Mabon/harvest season, because I see lots and lots of witches and pagans also work with corn dollies and reed dollies or sheaf dollies during Lunisod season as well, because that's the grain harvest. But these are little dollies made out of corn husks dried are actually pretty easy to get from hobby stores and craft stores and things like that. You can also pick your own corn at a local farm. Highly recommend. Go support your local farmers, your local independent farmers. Absolutely go support them. You'll have a great time as well. Trust. But if you don't have access to a local farm, which is completely realistic, get to the grocery store and grab some corn. Shuck it. Pull the corn sheaves off, the husks, excuse me, and let them dry. Lay them out flat and let them dry in the sun. Let them dry near a slightly open window. And then you can use them to make these dollies. Now, these dollies have lots of really cool traditions connected to them. The traditions vary from region to region, and so the way the Irish would work with them is different from the way that Slavs would work with it. Some cats really bring in the corn dollies, as I said, during Lunisad season. Some are really focused on it in Mabon season, and some are really focused on corn dollies at Samhain. But fall, right? Like here, end of summer, fall is where we really see these characters. And this dolly represents the goddess. She is often referred to as the old woman, but sometimes it's the old wife or the old witch or the old hag or the old sow. And she is the embodiment of the last vestiges of the energy of this harvest cycle. Usually it was a youth who was sent out into the fields to cut the last grain of, wheat or barley, or to cut down the last corn stalk. If it was, if there was an elder on the field, they usually were bum rushed off the field. It had to be someone young. There's a lot of traditions around there could be no strangers nearby. The owner of the land, if the person working the land wasn't the owner of the land couldn't watch. Lots of traditions like that, right? So there's a real hallowed energy to this idea of being the person who had this responsibility. They were called the Lord of the Harvest, and to be the one to cut this last grain of wheat or this last cornstalk or whatever it was called crying the neck. And there, you can look that phrase up. There's a lot of really cool information out there about the practices around crying the neck. Sometimes it would be, as I said, like the youngest person in the crew would be sent out to go do it. But sometimes, again, the traditions vary depending on region and era as well. All the reapers would get around it and they would all throw their sickle. So no one knew who actually had cut the grain or who had made the cut on the last corn stalk because it was considered unlucky. And again, that's per region and per era. Sometimes it was considered very lucky to be the Lord of the Harvest and be the person who got to cut the last one. In other areas, not lucky at all. And so that's one of my favorite traditions that's out there. But this corn stalk would be cut, and those that last piece of corn and the corn husks along with it would be brought to usually the lady of the house. But again, sometimes it would be the youngest daughter or what have you. And they would dry the corn husks, and then they would make these dollies. And the dollies also have a bunch of different traditions around them. So in some places, the dolly is put in the barn as a protection against mice, to protect the harvest that's just been pulled in. In other places, it's given like a place of honor somewhere in the house. In other places, it's burnt. In other places, it's thrown back into the field. And that's a relatively rare one, but you do see that. The burning also is something that happens in some places at Mabon occasionally, at Samhain or Yule frequently. But then in other places, the corn dolly is kept all the way through in a sacred place, the bed, usually with a wand or a rod that represents the thrust yang god energy. And then also sometimes some magical charms are kept with it, feathers, a sheaf of grass or something along those lines, until Imbolc, when planting season and plowing season begins. And that first furrow that is cut into the ground, the corn maiden or the corn dolly is grabbed and brought to the earth and put into that first furrow. And it's really thought to be a transferring of the energy of the old harvest into, as kind of like the seed of the new harvest. Like, here's the last little bit of energy from the old one to get the new one started. So these are corn dollies. Let me also show you some other things here. This is a sheaf dolly. These are also called corn dollies, even though they're clearly not made out of corn. I think this is probably barley. And you can find them and make them in really simple ways. Like this is just a basic braid across the top. And then you've got your 4 strands down at the bottom. So we have our nice, seasonal reference here. Cute. But sometimes people would get a little more complicated with it. This is absolutely a craft that people practice out there. And so this is a more humanoid type figure made out of those grains. This is something that's even more fancy, and we do see a lot of this kind of stuff as well. This is also a goddess type of figure. We see the triple goddess there in its design. And some people make life-size and larger-than-life corn women, corn men to stand out in the field, but ultimately to be burned, very similar to the Wicker Man that we burn at Litha or Lunicide season. Pretty cool. I found that and I was like, well, we have to show that. That's just badass. I'm doing what I can to get one of these for the next class. Very, very simple. One of the really cool things that I found is that a lot of these patterns and a lot of these traditions are totally dictated by region. And a lot of these braids and various weaving patterns are regional. And so they are very, very specific to an area. But you can see folks really are going to town with all of the various ways that you can weave and braid and all of that stuff. For those of you who work magic and spell casting, I'm sure you know that braiding is quite the magical act. And so here we have, braid on braid on braid, spiral on spiral. These are 2 loops that have been woven together. This is a horseshoe. I love that with like just the raw seeds at the end. It's so cool. And this was just like a really cool collection of all kinds of interesting little crafts and symbols that folks have figured out how to make. Really neat stuff. This is the kind of corn dolly that I'm used to working with and that I think is the most realistic to make. There are a ton of recipes online on how to make a corn dolly. I used to have a pattern in the Mabon book, but I took it out because it didn't make any sense. But this is a relatively easy and relatively inexpensive project to make, especially, like I said, if you go and buy some corn and you just use the husks that are on the corn, it's basically for free. And eat the corn while you make the dolly, and the cycle is complete. Nature is healing, yada yada. Side note, more or less related. Somebody asked me the other day about a question about using things that had been used already for magical practices and things like that. And my ultimate response was, I don't believe that the gods hold out their best for those who can afford it. And I really want to stress that because there is so much symbolism within Mabon around abundance, as there should be. That makes sense. But we might not be feeling very abundant. And projects, little crafts like this, for me, really help me with that feeling because it is simple and it's beautiful. And I'm touching on something that my genetic as well as cultural ancestors, my spiritual ancestors, have been doing for literally thousands of years. And it is solely out of the result of the work they were doing. Nobody went out and bought, wildcrafted artisanal corn husks for their corn dollies, right? This was strictly a byproduct of the work that they were doing. These are things that would just be thrown away or burned. And so feel into that. Do not think that you have to go spend $1,000 on products and supplies to be able to participate in witchcraft or magic in general. And certainly not these folk traditions. They were born out of what was left. They were born out of necessity, and they were born out of using what they had where they were in that moment. And I like these rustic little corn dollies. I think they're really beautiful. They have just I don't know. They just have such a wonderful charm to them. They're really, really cool. Side note, if you have moths and stuff like that in your house, they will go for this immediately. So you will be wanting to burn it, perhaps, on the next holiday. Just keeping it real, folks. I don't know what to say. All right. So that is a majority of the stuff that I wanted to talk about for witches and pagans and things like that. Let me see. Let me look through my notes just briefly and see if there's anything else we need to touch on. We get to work with lots and lots of deities at this time of year, but really the deity that I would recommend for you to hang out with, well, actually this year, I recommend 2 different deities for you to kind of hang out with. If you haven't been already working with Crom Dub, go check out Crom Dub. This is an Irish deity, and more or less Crom Dub is the ruling god from Lughnasadh through Samhain. We could say it that way. This is a Neolithic era deity that has managed to stand the test of time to now. Crom Dub means the dark bent one, or the dark burnt one, crooked one, the crooked one out of the burial mound. Crom Dub is an underworld deity, and he very much is the Holly King to the Oak King. He is the dark half of the year dude. And he, in my mind, truly represents the bent stalk. The stalk that is, its head is heavy and ready for harvest, and then the cut stalk of, I was doing something cool, but now I'm just a flaccid stalk hanging out in the wheat field waiting to get burnt and churned up into the soil, and put back into the earth so that I can be part of the new growth cycle. Crom Dub and a lot of the symbolism that we see with this deity matches a lot of the things that we have heard about kings and sovereigns and gods within the pagan world, that here in the vegetation season, they're sacrificed. They're either symbolically sacrificed or they are literally sacrificed. Another deity or another archetype that we have been working with on this idea all throughout Lughnasadh season is Saint John the Baptist, another character who absolutely is bent, loses their head, right? Odin is another character that comes through at this time of year as someone who goes through a type of sacrifice and is very different afterwards, right? Wise, sage, but not the same youthful, brash warrior that they were before. So Crom Dub, very, very cool. But I also recommend checking out literally any of the chthonic earth goddesses, because as we move from summer into fall, we are watching the mother goddess change shape. So throughout summer and into fall, the earth goddess, or the goddess that a lot of Wiccans and witches and pagans are working with, is the mother goddess. And we've got a bajillion to choose from, so hang out with any of them. Hera, Demeter, Ceres, whoever. That's like literally like the tiniest list. And they are usually depicted, in fact, they are almost always depicted as bright, strong, abundant, big laps, happy smiles, beautiful. If they're depicted in a landscape, it's an incredibly verdant, lush landscape that's just, overproducing, right? There's like animals and there's fruit and there's herbs and there's everything everywhere. It's very Queen of Pentacles vibes, right? Just surrounded by the lushness of reality and the physical earth. But that goddess is changing shape. right? We know that the goddess is always changing shape. She's always slowly leaving behind the old form and slowly growing into the new form. And so as the maiden became the mother is going to become the crone. And in my opinion, in Virgo season, which we are just here at the very end of, Virgo turns into Libra season the day that we hit fall equinox. Virgo is often depicted as a hermit, a wizard, a male figure. But I wonder. And when we look at the constellation of Virgo, it is the maiden. And in fact, she's laying on her back, in my opinion, about ready to give birth, and she's holding grapes and grains in either of her hands. So she's definitely like standing there and giving us the signal of, I'm the one, like, here's the harvest, let's go. It's time. But that character is also retreating from reality in a way. They are standing back a little bit from reality in a way. And then we come back into Libra season, it's all bright and happy again, and woo! But it's almost like Virgo gives us this glimpse of what the crone is going to be when the mother finally turns into the crone. And so, as much as we have this beautiful, verdant, abundancy goddess thing in front of us, this version of the goddess as the mother who is just producing, giving of her body, giving of her power, protecting and providing, and everything is wonderful and joyous because we have plenty and we're okay. As much as she is there, she is also the rotting vegetation that is slowly starting to decay in the fields. In this moment, the sun is still shining. It's beautiful. We have lots of food. Everybody's having a good time. There's a bonfire. That one person that I saw earlier at the harvest that I think is really cute is here. Maybe they want some meat. Oh my God. Right. We're still in that, right? But creeping in at the edges are the chthonic earth goddesses, which are the goddesses of earth, but from the underworld. And they are the goddesses of the rich black soil. They are the goddesses of whatever it is, whatever the magical stuff is that's happening down there, that then ultimately makes all these plants come up above the soil and do this cool thing every year. There's something going on down there. That's possibly part of why we put our dead in the ground. And those chthonic earth goddesses are the ones that are taking our dead in, eating them, being fueled by them, protecting them, guiding them onto the afterlife, all the above. Yes, right? Okay. So, just that stuff. If we're dealing with deities right now, and we probably are, I highly recommend hanging out with Crom Dub for a bit and other deities that feel like him, as well as any and all of our earth goddesses, knowing that they are slowly starting to take on this darker, more underworld piece. And something that came to me in my research this particular go around, just a concept, hang out with this, see how it feels for you. But for the longest time, I have always I've always imagined our process at this time of year as the Underworld Journey is presenting itself to us, and we are about to go on the Underworld Journey. And I still think that that's true. But it came to me suddenly the other day that it's really the male deities, it's really the gods that go on the Underworld Journey. I think that our chthonic earth goddesses are the other underworld journey. And so we have the capacity as pagans, as witches, as heathens, to identify with any and all of these parts. So as much as a lot of our work as we move through fall and winter is about us consciously going on the underworld journey and processing and having things happen to us, and then we deal with it and we internalize, we think about it, we process it, we grow. As much as that is a big part of our process, I wonder how much of our process is being the darkness, like coming into communion with this wet black soil that is taking everything back that it has given. I don't know. Maybe I'm going through some things in my personal life. If you know, you know. But I'm just saying, there's an idea for you to work with. If that just is a bunch of hooey to you, set it off to the side. Don't worry about it. But, you know, it's something for you. Okay. Let's move on to the other hour and a half of material that I have. Okay, guys. Let's get into this. Okay, first and foremost, here is your Mabon Wheel. This is in the folder for you guys. These wheels were designed for me by my wonderful close friend, Ryan Jack Allred. Please go check out his website. He is an incredible illustrator and absolutely deserves your likes and your thumbs ups. And if you see these around on the internet, he designed them. He made this one. And we have one for every holiday. Love it. Okay. This is our Sabbat sign that we work with for Mabon. And I still don't know where these signs came from. I know that they were invented in the last 100 years. I believe they were invented in the last 100 years. I still do not know the witch or the pagan or the weirdo that came up with them, but thanks, wherever you are, thank you, and I will happily credit you once I know who you are. A lot of times the signs to me have a lot of information that I can I read into them. And to me here, I'm seeing the equal cross of earth that we use in lots of different magical systems to mean manifestation or the manifested or the physical plane. The place where the spirit has come down into the time-space continuum and boom, we have a person, we have a sheep, we have a thing. And then above it, we see the horns of ram, perhaps, the horns of sheep. The horns of are those antlers from deer or stags who are mating at this time of year. Lots of stuff. Maybe those are two serpents. And that also would make sense for us. We'll talk about that in just a second. But that also will make sense for us at this time of year. So, work with that as you see fit. For modern pagans, modern witches, modern heathens, polytheists, and those who love us, our witches' work at this time of year is centering around harvest, health, purification, balance, and transition. And we have talked about a lot of this already, right? We're harvesting metaphorically or literally all over the Northern Hemisphere. Balance between day and night, transition from the light half of the year into the dark half of the year. As I like to say, at spring equinox, we're shifting from dark to light. At fall equinox, we're shifting from light to dark. And, but here, health purification. This stems from a lot of our imagery of the great goddess as the mother goddess with her water breaking. That was our 4 months of monsoons and hurricanes that we just had for the last 4 months. And now, boom, here's that. And so there's health here, there's purification here in terms of like we've been moving through this one form of the process for a very long time, and now we're shifting forms, and we want to purify from the work that we have been doing so that we can move into the next work that we need to do, clean slate, ready to go. To expand on these ideas, giving thanks, sharing your bounty, rest after labor, communing with ancestors, purification and healing, and alone time. So again, I want you to think about the metaphor of a person giving birth, right? There's a lead up to it that maybe is a quiet and intense portion of time, and then there's the birth itself, which is messy and loud and freaky, and then after that, again, we're shutting it back down again, right? That person that just gave birth is like probably not too interested in having 100 visitors come over and hang out, or like immediately going out to the club the next night. Like they probably are going to want to take a little time to be alone, to be with their closest family, to be with their baby, etc., right? So we are giving thanks for all of this incredible bounty. We are sharing with people, but we are also wanting to say, whew, summer kind of kicked my ass a little bit. Let me take a minute and like get my bearings. Virgo season, which has passed, and the beginning of Libra season, which is just about on us, is a really fantastic time for that shifting gears thing. putting away our summer clothes and getting out the fall and winter clothes, changing the furniture around in the house to maximize the different sunlight angles, all of that kind of stuff, right? Our lives are like, go, 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 work, 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 do, do, do. But this little sliver of time that is the very end of Lughnasadh and the beginning of Mabon, I, as your local witch, highly encourage you to take a minute to ground yourself, be in the place with yourself, and really kind of, okay, we're not doing that stuff anymore, and we're about to start doing that stuff. What do I need to do for myself to disengage from those ways of being and get ready to engage these ways of being? One of the meditations that I encourage for people at this time of year is to consider the life that you live in August, right? We're sleeping outside. We get like 4 hours of sleep a night because the sun never goes down. It's hot. It's beautiful. I love the smell of skin, like all of that, right? And then think about who you are and the life that you're living in January. Significantly different, right? Like very different. The sun never rises. We don't care about anything, right? I just want to sleep for 18 hours a day, right? And eat some bread and then go back to sleep. It's very different lives. Well, this is the season where we shift from one to the other. So we want to take some rest after our labor of the summer, but we also want to make sure that we're giving ourselves time alone to check in, to shift, to process what all has happened in this year so far. And in any year, I would be giving this information, but in 2021, yeah, could you please take a minute off to the side? Could you pull the whole damn car over, please, and process some of what has occurred in this year? Because that's also how we go on. That's also how we show up in our best and strongest and most with our deepest levels of capacity and capability for a situation and for our loved ones and our work that we have to get done. This is also traditionally a really potent time for communing with ancestors, and this is a lot about divination. This is a lot about asking for help, asking for protection over the abundance that we've just pulled in, right? We don't want a blight to suddenly show up and creep through all of our stored grains. We don't want rats or mice to suddenly show up and ruin everything that we've been working on for months. So we're asking for protection there, but we're asking for divination. We're asking for help and for wisdom from the ancestors as we head into the dark, as we head into the Underworld Journey, and we begin to get ready to do our dark half of the year, fall and winter work. We're asking our ancestors, hey, can you hook us up, please? Can you give us any insight on what is going on? All right. Other names for this holiday from various pagan groups from around the planet, which is Thanksgiving, Fruit Harvest, Mab, yes, connected to Mabon, Ishtar's Day, potentially. Michaelmas happens at this time of year. Dojinki is the Slavic name. Halagmonath, the Druid name, and this means holy month or month of holy harvest. Gwyn Canol Hydrif, I'm sorry, I don't remember what it means. Mien Fomhar is literally just September, the month of September. And Alban Ephred Druid, another Druid name for this, also meaning holy month or holy harvest, approximately. And, these names give us a lot of information about what it is that we're doing on this day, or these days, or for this season. Okay, let us move on. If you have the workbook, let us move on. Yes, we just spent an hour and 12 minutes on one page. Welcome to the class. Moving on to the global context. Now, when we move out of the pagan realms, past or present, and we look at what other religions and philosophical practices and spiritual practices are doing, cultural practices around the planet, very similar stuff: abundance, healing, ocean worship, ancestor worship, and New Year. So we saw a big run of New Year's kick off during Lughnasadh season. And now we also have a big run of New Year's that run from September into October. The probably the most well-known New Year that happens at this time of year is the Jewish New Year, which is Rosh Hashanah. This year it's the year 5782. And that kind of leads into a whole complex of holy days for Jewish folk. There's Rosh Hashanah, which is the head of the year, or New Year's itself. There's Yom Kippur, and then there's Sukkot. And the Jewish festival stretches for weeks, falling somewhere in Mabon season. Sometimes it's just at the edge, like at the very end of Lughnasadh season, but it's almost always somewhere in Mabon season. Rosh Hashanah celebrates the birth of the universe and the new year. Folks will eat special foods, lay off from work, blow the shofar, which is a special ram's horn. Hey, wait a minute. We kind of saw a ram's horn in the Sabbat sign. Weird. Yom Kippur happens about 10 days later and is a solemn day of prayer, followed 5 days later by Sukkot, a 5-day festival celebrating the harvest. Folks eat outside and celebrate rituals around the 4 kinds: a palm frond, a citron, myrtle, and willow branches. Lots of really beautiful tradition with those 3 holidays. If you're intrigued, go check it out. It's really cool. Other things that we are seeing happen at this time of year. On the actual day or days of the equinox, we have Koinarena from our Inca friends, which we looked at that serpent of light that's running up and down. Remiquila is the winged serpent of light. The Dojinki from our Slavic friends, this is a grain and festival harvest. They wear those beautiful wreaths woven out of grains. Really cool stuff. From our Babylonian friends, the death of Tammuz, who is the vegetation deity. And now in my research this year, I've realized that that is not entirely accurate. So let me say this. There is a documented death day for Tammuz at summer solstice. But there is a large body of relatively modern pagan work putting Tammuz's death day here at fall equinox because he is a vegetation god, and pretty much across the board in the northern hemisphere, all the vegetation gods are dying or dead, or they are going through a profound transformation and underworld journey. In the Eresh Kegel or Eresh Kagal and Ishtar myth, or Inanna, she is potentially coming back up from her underworld journey at this time, or she's coming up at winter solstice, or she's coming up in spring. And she sends Tammuz back as a punishment, maybe, to the lands of the dead at this time of year, potentially. So there is a connection here. And as I've said in the podcast, and I've said in a lot of other places, it's really difficult to find accurate information about the actual days or the actual seasons that a lot of these incredibly ancient holy days supposedly took place on. The fact that we refer to fall equinox as Ishtar's day even is a modern adaptation. We don't actually have good historical records saying that yes, the Babylonians in fact absolutely celebrated Ishtar on this day. It's very likely that they celebrated her, in accordance to a pattern dictated by the planet Venus, and that's something that happens on an 8-year cycle. So the things that people are attributing to something that happened every single year might have been something that happened every 8 years, and not even at this time of year. All of that to be said, I do know what I'm talking about, and this is really important. But, but as we talked about in the podcast and a few of the other classes, there are modern pagan adaptation dates for a lot of these things, and I think that they're reasonable. I think that they're okay, partly because sometimes some of these things we may never know. Like, the information just might be lost forever. And in other cases, it's difficult. It's difficult to keep track of the lunar cycle or the planetary cycle or whatever, and how the dates change from year to year. That's my job. You can leave it up to me. And so if it's easier for you to just think, harvest goddesses, September 21st, done, moving on with my life, go for it. Like, that's okay in my opinion. Technically, all of this stuff is arbitrary, but that's for a different class. Okay. Also at this day, we have International Coastal Cleanup Day, which is one of the places that we see big emphasis around water and ocean goddesses and ocean energy. But other holy days that we have at this time of year, Michaelmas. This is in celebration of the Archangel Michael, or Michael. But this is also the date now in the most modern version of the Catholic Church that all of the archangels are worshipped or venerated. If we roll back through time, the 4 archangels, or 7 or 8, depending on what magical system you're working with, have holy days throughout the year. Yes, we talk about them. But Michaelmas is at this time. The Feast of Bacchus is at this time. We have Durga Puja and the Navaratri, from our Hindu friends at this time of year as well. The Underworld Journey of Osiris potentially is still occurring, depending on how you count the calendar. Okay, so throughout September and October, we have harvest festivals and underworld journeys throughout time and around the Northern Hemisphere. We have the Harvest Moon Festival of Chang'o, or Chang'o. This celebration is dedicated to the Chinese moon goddess Chang'o. Folks get together with family light lanterns and offer moon cakes at the goddess's altars. The round rice cakes represent the wholeness of family and can be a nostalgic moment for people separated from home, which I think is really, really beautiful. This is a holiday that absolutely is celebrated by, whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Sorry. There we go. That is absolutely celebrated by literally billions of people. There are a ton of different lunar festival holidays on the full moon that is the closest to fall equinox. And this year, the full moon closest to fall equinox is actually September 20th. It is literally the weekend of fall equinox, or within just a couple days of the equinox. And so we here in America, and wherever else you might be watching this video, absolutely go out on the 20th and go look at that beautiful harvest moon. Why? Because it's good for you, and because it's beautiful, but also because you will literally be joining in with billions of people around the planet who are participating in the same thing. Go get some cookies and some snacks and make a little picnic of it, or have a quiet moment by yourself, whatever. But it's one of those really cool things that you get to join in for free. Just walk outside and look at the moon. And you are participating in something that billions of other people are doing at the same time, or within that 24-hour span, as well as throughout time. And we're talking about thousands of years of people taking the time to look at the harvest moon in particular. Really cool stuff. I messed up a little bit, unfortunately, and I forgot to include some slides because I really want to talk about the Elusive Mysteries. The Elusive Mysteries also are happening this year on fall equinox, not just within the season of it, but they actually start on this full moon. The great Greek myth drama cycle that happens every year, commemorating Persephone, or Kor, or Proserpina's descent into the underworld and Demeter's mourning for the loss of her daughter. Practitioners were taken through a multi-day ritual that included plays, sleep deprivation, and the drinking of a holy beverage called kykeon, made from barley and water and mushrooms and poppies and ergot and grated goat cheese, because who doesn't love goat cheese in their wine? That's so classic, right? I'm sipping on some right now. No, I'm not. Greeks. Wacky. But there is, I don't know, can you guys handle 2 seconds while I try to find these slides? I'm totally going to find them. I know exactly where they are. I just have to, give you a black screen for 2 seconds, unfortunately. But I really want to show you these slides because they're freaking cool. It's not even that much, right? It's not even that much. But I'm going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and it's going to be okay. Everybody hold on. Be cool. Be cool. Everybody be cool. Everything is fine. This is all fine. We're good. We are good to go. We're almost there. We're so close. It's very exciting. I'm glad you're excited with me, because I'm excited that it's not showing me the thing that I need to see right now. But it's very close. We're still super duper close to the thing that I am seeking, and we are getting even closer. Thank you so much for your patience. I'll edit this out next time, or when I put this video up, I swear. Let me show you. Nope, I totally did it wrong. Okay. We're almost there, I swear to God. Des. Yes, I want to remove that. Yes, I want to add that and that. And then we're going to go here. And I'm going to click this. And we're so close to success that it's wild. Oh my gosh, here we go. Boom. See, it was worth it, wasn't it? Come on. That's dope. Isn't that dope? You know what you're looking at? I'll tell you. Wait, go back. This is a depiction of Demeter, and she is holding in her hands grains and poppy heads, and then she also has serpents twining around her arms. Super potent stuff, guys. Super potent stuff. Oh wait, we are filming. Yes, we're good. Are you guys still seeing this, or have I screwed up everything? Oh no. My power was too great. Oh good, no. Okay, you guys can see it. Sorry. Okay, we're actually back on schedule now. Here we go. Back on track. This is Demeter, and she is holding grains and poppy heads and serpents twining around her arms. Now, we see goddesses with serpents in either hand lots and lots and lots of times. But we also know that serpents are a way of telling time. Why? Because serpents came up above ground at spring when the weather got nice, and they go back below ground at fall when the weather turns cold again. How convenient. So when we see this goddess sitting in between those two serpents, she's saying, I rule this portion of the year. And what does she have in her hands? Barley and poppies, the base ingredients of our drink, Kikion. Now, the other picture that I want to show you as we discuss the Elusive Mysteries or Eleusinian Mysteries is this incredibly dope carving of these two goddesses. Who is this? This is Demeter and Kor, aka Proserpina or Persephone. And you'll note that they are dressed nearly identical, and that is on purpose. They are more or less indistinguishable from each other, and that's on purpose. This is a visual reminder that the goddess is the goddess is the goddess. The maiden turns into the mother turns into the crone turns into the maiden, you get me? You get me? So here we have the visual reminder these two goddesses are saying to us, don't get it twisted. I am her, she is me, we're all doing the thing. And what are these two doing? They're handing each other mushrooms. They're handing each other mushrooms. Okay? Okay. And we know, or we are relatively certain, that hallucinogens played a really big part in the Eleusinian Mysteries and the experiences that folks had in that initiatory practice. I just really wanted to share this with you guys. I've talked about these images for years in the classes and never really had the capacity to be able to show you the picture. So now here it is. Again, Demeter telling time, telling us I start the growing season and I stop the growing season. And in both places, I'm going to get you high AF. Okay. Okay, let's move on. Now that we've talked about drugs for a little while and stuff. Briefly, global holidays, last couple global holidays I want to mention. Navaratri, this is the great week-long Hindu festival honoring the great goddess Durga. We love Durga on the channel. Saraswati, Lakshmi, and the new dark year. So Hindus absolutely do, in some regions, see the light half of the year and the dark half of the year. Lamps are lit, new decorations are put up, new clothes are bought, and friends and family gather together. And if you remember, as I've mentioned in past classes and on the podcast, once we hit those big runs of meteor showers, which we will talk about in just a second, we see all these lamp lighting festivals and lamp procession festivals and torch procession festivals happening in the ancient and in the modern world. Last holidays to mention, as we move into the end of Mabon season, so that's very deep into October, where Libra turns into Scorpio just before Samhain, we find several breaking down festivals. And so that's kind of speaking back to that energy that I was talking about of like, yes, we see the mother goddess at this time of year as this verdant, bright-cheeked, abundant, like grapes pouring out of everywhere, babe goddess being, right? But then we also want to acknowledge the destruction of that idea too, and how that idea is changing into whatever comes next, whatever the next form of that being is. And so we start to see some breaking down festivals like Thesmophoria from our ancient Greek ancestors and the Day for Eris from our modern chaos magicians here in this century. Thesmophoria is incredible. I have a big old piece on that holiday on my website if you want to read up about it and get ready for it. But it's basically a yes to all things woman or femme or gyne-centric or whatever. Like, and that's not about biology at all. That's just like anybody that kind of aligns with that. And all of our masculine, mask-presenting, mask-leaning folks can just stay the fuck home. Thank you. Bye. It's a lot of that. My favorite thing from, well, all of it is my favorite thing when it comes to Thesmophoria because it's such a cool festival. But my favorite, the way it kicks off is that women will take bundles of this herb. I cannot remember the name of it, but it basically means it's like a chaste herb. It means like to be chaste. And they make like humanoids figures out of it. They make dollies out of the herb and leave it in their bed next to their partner as a like, nah, I'm good. Thank you. And then we have the Day for Eris. Eris, of course, is the twin goddess of Aries. She is the goddess of chaos and mischief, strife in some places, but you know, it's just, I guess, how you deal with chaos. She is the one that rolls the golden apple into the hall that the gods fight over that starts the Trojan War. And the golden apple, of course, says Callisti for the prettiest one. But this day, October 13th, is a day dedicated to that goddess. And as I like to say, make room for chaos or chaos will make its room. Tiptoeing into the true dark fall of fall before we step into Samhain season, that day dedicated to Eris there is very much there to help us break down what might be holding us back from truly letting go of the old growth cycle and getting ready to move into the new thing. Okay, let's move on to what's next? Oh my God. Okay, it's astronomy. Let's talk about this, and we've also got a cool sky guide to talk about, etc. So at this time of year, our September full moon names are names like harvest moon, full corn moon, barley moon, scarlet plum moon, moon when the deer paws the earth, chrysanthemum moon, sturgeon moon, etc. All the full moons in Pisces all of the full moons in September are always near the stars of Pisces or Aries. Our October full moon names are names like Hunter's Moon, Travel Moon, Dying Moon, Blackberry Moon, Moon when quilling and beating is done. And as we talk about in a lot of the classes, a lot of these moon names come from the Algonquin, Especially the really interesting ones, like when the deer paws the earth, or when quilling and beating is done. These are almost exclusively from the Algonquin tribe. But a lot of these moon names come from traditions from all over the planet. It's been a really big deal for lots of people around the world to name their full moons. It's super important for them. We'll come back to the constellations in just a second. Let's talk about the sky guide. So this is a list of the major stuff that's happening in the sky during Mabon season. In here, we've got our full moons and our new moons. We've got the torrid meteor showers. We have the Draconid meteor showers, and I took the other one out. Okay, and then we have a couple of heliacal risings as well. Specifically, the fixed star Spica. It's one of, if not the brightest star in the sky, and it is used as a time and seasonal marker for people, and has been for thousands and thousands of years. This year for Mabon season, we also have Excite, a Mercury retrograde. We'll be talking about it on the podcast. But I mention it because it is retrograde in Libra, and that is the sign that we're going to be moving through while it's in retrograde. So there is an opportunity for you in this particular Mabon season to go back and review, to go back and reorganize, renegotiate. I like to say that anytime we're working with a Mercury retrograde, whatever our words are, whatever our work is that we are addressing, we want to put RE in front of it. We can't just stop, right? Oh my God, it's a Mercury retrograde. I can't leave the house. I can't go to work. I can't pay a bill. Unlikely. The world's going to keep turning, right? Also, we want to remember Mercury retrogrades 3 to 4 times every single year. So if it was actually as epic as we all make it out to be, our phones would constantly be exploding, right? We'd be moving every 3 months. It'd be a lot. It's probably not that. So work will continue, right? Life moves on, even though we're having a Mercury retrograde. But we want to take that opportunity as a time to review, renegotiate, reconsider, reconnect, reestablish, right? That kind of work is super, super appropriate during retrogrades. We'll talk about it more in the podcast though. So there's that. There's our sky guide. And I think that the other interesting thing here is our first full moon of fall at 27 degrees of Aries is basically at the same time that the moon moves, or the sun moves into Scorpio. So our first full moon of fall is very in league with Samhain vibes. The last full moon of summer is this September 20th full moon that we're going to be calling the harvest moon, because it's the closest one to the equinox, but it is actually in summer. So we're going to go a whole month before we get our first full moon of fall. The first new moon of fall is on October 6th at 13 degrees of Libra. So if you have anything around 13 degrees of Libra, or anything around 13 degrees of Libra, Capricorn, Aries, or Cancer, this season might have a little pressure for you, have a little intensity for you, but it's good. You're a witch. You know what you're doing. Okay. Coming back to our astronomy, not that that wasn't astronomy, but back to our astronomy. These are our 2 constellations that we are working with, at least in tropical astrology / astronomy. We're working with Virgo and we're working with Libra. Yes, I know that we worked with Virgo in the last season, but the metaphor of what we're doing with Virgo and what all Virgo represents is so profoundly influential over the season of Mabon. We can't ignore this. And as well, at various eras in time, Virgo, the constellation of Virgo, encompassed Libra. The stars of Libra were actually part of the constellation of Virgo. So at one point, this was all the same portion of the sky, as it were. Virgo still is one of the largest constellations that's ever existed. It's a huge constellation, takes up a lot of the sky. I love this symbolism, though. Again, we know that Virgo is the maiden laying on her back, probably about to give birth, holding grapes and grains in either hands. Vindimiatrix literally means the the grape carrier, the grape mother, the grape maker. Spica, literally a spike of grain. So that is literally the grapes and the grain in this constellation. But Libra, let's talk about that constellation for a second, because we've been talking about the mother, right? So we know who she is. Libra is often depicted as the scales, and it is also often depicted as a lamp. And if we think about this character, Virgo, carrying a lamp or a lantern, well, there's our Virgo tarot card, the Hermit, but that's also the Statue of Liberty and lots of other torch-carrying goddesses, which is one of the ways that I've thought about interpreting this collection of stars, these constellations together. I also, though, think about the constellation that's on the constellation that's on the other side of Libra. And who is that? That's Scorpio. Everybody's excited for that, right? Yeah, no, we love you, Scorpios. It's fine. Calm down. Don't take a hit out on us. Libra also sometimes is incorporated into the constellation of Scorpio as we look back through time. So Libra is sometimes part of Virgo, sometimes part of Scorpio, occasionally its own being. Libras out there are like, oh my God, finally somebody understands me. Yes, that's what's going on. But Virgo, and this is something we talk about in the classes year after year, Virgo as an entity, as a concept, is the maiden, right? But it's the virgin. The untouched, the unowned, right? And if we want to get puritanical about it, it literally means a person who hasn't had sex and yet they are pregnant. Oh yeah, we've heard about her, right? We remember her from various religions. But on the other side of Libra, we have Scorpio, who, that sign rules the genitals and the waste organs in our body. Sex and death are sort of the catchphrases or the catchwords for the constellation or the sign, of Scorpio. So we have a character that doesn't have sex in theory, and then a character that rules sex on the other side, and death. Virgo also being the arbiter of life, right? The producer. Grains and grapes right there in her hands, or their hands. So, really interesting concept here, right? If we come at it again from a very puritanical point of view, we have the virgin and the whore on either side of this center of light. I happily do not think of it in such reductive terms, and I think it's much, much more complicated and sophisticated than that. And I think that this is very similar to the imagery that we see, that we talked about last week in the podcast, between Isis and Nephthys. Isis being the gate of life, the literal gateway that we pass through to be born, to come into life. And Nephthys is literally the gateway of death. It is the wall or the gate that we pass through to go to whatever happens after life. And I think that Libra perhaps is us. Libra is very much our lifetime between these two great goddesses that oversee our birthing and our dying. But what I also love about this image of Virgo and Libra and then Scorpio, who we'll talk about in the next class, is in Roman society, and I expect that this was probably true in lots and lots of other places, it was very normal when a woman was giving birth that they would stand and hold a lamp in front of her or in front of them as they were getting ready to give birth, to literally shine a light for the baby to see, to know that's the direction I'm supposed to go. So there's also something very special here about Virgo potentially being this person giving birth, and Scorpio being potentially the person that's holding up the lamp and overseeing, how's this birth going to go with this character? I don't know. Again, as usual, am I projecting stuff onto this? Totally possible. I'm going to just say it right out. Am I correct? I don't know. Don't listen just to me, some crazy lady on the internet. Go read up on this stuff for yourself. But aren't those intriguing symbols? Aren't those intriguing images to work with? Again, here at this season of abundance, but then the fall from the abundance into this dark underworld journey that we're going to go on. I love it. I love it. I want some more of... Okay. Other events that are happening at this time of year, we still have our hurricane and monsoon and typhoon season is continuing or wrapping up, depending on where you are on the planet and whether or not climate change has really kicked in the era that you happen to be living in. We have the Orionids meteor showers, Draconid meteor showers, the heliacal rising of Spica and a few other fixed stars, etc., etc. Now, let us move on to the astrology. There we go. It's like, what am I doing? Oh, yeah. Here we go. Okay. So as we move into Mabon season, the sun leaves Virgo, and if you have the workbook, you can read that portion, and it moves into Libra, and that's what we're going to really focus on here, because that is the sign that is at the center of Mabon season. We have lots of Virgo vibes, but the season starts with Libra, and then we have the last 10 days or so of the season is where the sun has moved into Scorpio, and we definitely, it's kind of the preamble to Samhain at that point, right? In Libra, we seek a balance between who we are in the bright and dark halves of the year. We also seek balance in our relationships and our contacts, looking for beauty and maybe not so much structure. We have honed our diplomacy over the bright part of the year. So our moons that we are working with are the new moon at 23 degrees of Libra on October 6th, and then the full moon at 9 degrees of Aries on October 20th. The new moon in Libra, Raven Caldera in their book Moon Phase Astrology, big fan, check it out, calls this the White Knight's moon. On this moon, we double down on our convictions. We seek out the balance and the differences between right and wrong while walking a fine line between sweet and salty. And my recommended meditation for that new moon is, where did you learn the difference between right and wrong? Consider that, right? Like, there's lots of stuff that we have inherited from our ancestors that we do not want to bring into the future. We don't even want it in the present. So this is a really great opportunity to discover who taught me how to tell the difference between right and wrong, and what were their biases. Why did they teach me what they taught me? And have I evolved my beliefs, or am I holding on to naivety in search of peace? Yes, calling you out. There's no other option. And then we have the full moon in Aries on October 20th. This is the warrior's moon. This moon asks us to find something meaningful to fight for and or to turn our swords into plowshares. Consider all that there is to fight for in this world. What does it look like to be a fierce, loving warrior, even when you have to go alone? And that's a thing. And our loneliness is something that can, or our aloneness is something that can also really come up for us in fall season. All of that stuff. There's another whole paragraph of good shit in there. I'm going to save that for the folks that have the workbook. Okay. There's also some stuff in here to do with this last full moon for the Pisces full moon that's coming up on September 20th. There's meditations for that in here as well. Now let us move on to tarot. At this time of year, we have options. So we can certainly work with just the Empress and the Justice card. The Empress card is connected to the planet Venus, and the Justice card, by some magical traditions, is connected to the sign Libra. Venus is the planetary ruler of Libra. And so that's what's up with this. Notice these bright green borders. Look at this green and the purple and the red. great color magic going on in these cards. These cards are from one of my favorite decks of all time, the Builders of the Adytum Tarot. Big fan. And why I like it is because the deck comes in black and white, and you paint the cards yourself to establish a deeper unconscious connection with the symbolism. But I'm going to take us to here. So here we have the Hermit, which connects to Virgo, and the Magician, who connects to the planet Mercury, which is the ruling planet of the Hermit. And then we also have the Empress and Justice, who we just talked about. The Hermit really represents that temporary retreat to attend to the body that we were talking about in that moment of, like, if we're working with this metaphor of pregnancy and the goddess delivering things and all of that stuff, the Hermit represents that minute that's like, okay, I need to get my act together before we actually go on stage and do the thing. The Magician is about focusing the mind, and acquiring and honing the tools that we need to get the thing done. Notice that ellipses over their head, or the infinity symbol, very similar to that shape that the sun was making in the sky. Then we move into Venus and the Empress. This is attending to the world and witnessing the natural order. There's our harvest festivals and our harvest work that we need to be doing. And then we move into Libra, which is about attending to the world and witnessing what is fair versus what is right. And that is some spicy work that we can do at this time of year. I'm going to read a little bit to you, and then we'll look at some more tarot cards. Summer's waning light illuminates facets of our deeds over the year so far, and we would do well to take a moment to try to see what the universe is pointing out. The Magician and the Empress, the last time that we hung out with the Magician and the Empress was during Beltane, if you remember that. The Magician, again, connected to the planet Mercury, and that is the ruling planet of Gemini, the sign at the end of Beltane season. And the Empress is Venus, again, and connects to the sign of Taurus, the beginning of Beltane season. At that point, so let me say this again. The last time that we hung out with the Magician and the Empress was during Beltane. At that point, we had just thrown a bunch of seeds in the ground, and we were eagerly tending our gardens, wondering what would grow. We had no idea at the time what those experiments would turn into, or the actions we would have to take to turn dreams into reality. Now, here at Mabon, we are at the opposite end of that energy. We are looking over our crops, our results, and we are weighing the efficacy and the morality of our actions. We might be tempted into inaction. Don't rock the boat. Don't look too closely at these situations, or we might be obligated to deal with them. But choosing to not deal with your crap is just prolonging the inevitable. And when we do choose to take action and face our pain, face our shadow, face our work, we are changed and molded by it, in addition to becoming active co-creators of reality. Memory is the bedrock in which imagination finds its seeds. However, it is action that turns the wheel. All the actions we take in the conscious world are somehow influenced by unconscious movements we make, which in turn influence our experiences and what we take from them. Kind of like the grain churns the mill and we turn the mill, and the grain feeds us and we feed the grain, and the grain turns the mill and we turn the mill, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so as I said, these are Builders of the Adytum Tarot. And Here is the Smith-Waite deck versions of the same card. Again, we have the Empress for Venus, we have Justice for Libra. And yes, I know there are lots of folks that like to work with the Strength card for Libra season, or as card 11. That's fine. That's totally fine. The symbolism really still fits, honestly. But I just prefer working with Libra. We even have a little scale, and it's one of few tarot cards that actually has a scale on it. And then we are working with, as we move through Libra season by some magical systems, the 2, 3, and 4 of swords. That's the Moon in Libra, Saturn in Libra, and Jupiter in Libra, again, by some magical traditions. There are other magical traditions that have the same cards but different planets in Libra. And then there are other magical traditions that just use different swords cards altogether here. So just know you got options. You got options, kid. Okay. What is next on the thing? So many things to thing. I think that I want to... Yep, we did that. I'm just looking through. I'm like, oh my gosh, did we actually really... No, we didn't. Okay. One more thing. Some notes on the scales in the workbook. The constellation of Libra is thought to be scales by some cultures, held aloft by Virgo. For a while, it was included in Scorpio as the claws of the scorpion. But going back even further, we see it as a lamp or a censer and sometimes an altar, all either held up by Virgo or Scorpio, or sometimes both. As the scales, it was known as the balance or the weight or wage. The word Libra means pounds, as in a weight or measurement in Greek. Archaeologists found Libra pressed into the coins at Palmyra. Many poets over the centuries have reinforced the idea of scales by suggesting the seasons are measured and evened out here. It has been called stathmos, which means station or way beam, referring to the stillness of a level scale. When we think of the image of Virgo holding up the scales, we are met with the archetype of justice, and that is depicted in the Justice card. In tarot, which is ruled by Libra in some decks. Interestingly, this constellation was sometimes called Diki, which means a trial or to weigh or judge. As a lamp, we see the Hindus refer to this constellation as fire. The people of the Euphrates called it a lamp or a censer. Coptic Egyptians called it Lamvadia, or the lamp. When we consider the image of Virgo holding up a lamp, we get the Hermit card in tarot ruled by Virgo. Now, how is a lamp like a set of scales? Think on that. Think of the law represented by the lamp held up by the hermit, and the law represented by the scales held up by justice. The Chinese call this constellation the celestial balance, but originally they called it the crocodile or the dragon. Now again, we have talked about dragons and serpents a whole lot this year, and the crocodile, that's a meat from the Book of the Dead, from the Egyptians, that is there to snatch the heart off of the scales, being weighed against the feather of truth. Still, other civilizations saw this sign as chariot's yoke. The chariot of Pluto, referring to Pluto's chariot as he makes off with Virgo or Persephone or Proserpina or Kor. So that brings us more or less to the end of class. Let me briefly scooch through these guys. Just to recap, these are our ritual forms that are super appropriate for acknowledging Mabon sharing your bounty, making wine, or really any kind of fermented beverages at all, giving offerings to trees, practicing divination, doing your shadow work, purification of self and home. And purification, that's totally subjective to you. Remembering ancestors. We have lots and lots of holidays throughout Lughnasadh and all through Mabon season that are ancestral honoring days. Cleaning up graves, lighting lamps, walking in nature. I will say that for every single class, there is absolutely no better way for a witch to witness the turn of the season than to go out and be in the world and touch the earth itself. Meditation and solitude, absolutely ritual forms during Mabon season. Atonement, very much so. Self-care and collecting seeds. And very similar to that spirit of the corn dolly being made now, that's then going to be put into the furrow in the ground in Imbolc season when the growth cycle starts up again. Collecting seeds now at the end of this growth season to carry that energy through to the start of the next one. And most importantly, taking up a cause that is important to your community. And how do you know that? You go talk to your goddamn neighbors and you find out. That's what you do. I know. It's witchcraft. You have to talk to people. I told you have to do it. Okay. Symbols that we work with at this time of year. These are things that you could wear, incorporate on your altar, what have you. Corn dollies, obviously, right? Cornucopias, scales, the setting sun, a sheaf of grain, a spiral, grapes, and wine. Animal helpers at this time of year. Swan, goose, dogs, duck, deer, antelopes, snake, food and drink, literally any and everything that is in season at this time of year. Our incense and oils, myrrh in particular, cypress in particular, sage in particular, really, really potent at this time of year. Mineral helpers, most of these are connected to Libra, more or less. In particular, preonite is really fantastic to work with. Kyanite, also fantastic, and andalusite. Actually, that's more of a Virgo stone. Lepidolite and all of the opals and all the turmalines, those all come out of the auspices of Libra. Plant helpers, again, everything that is in season at this time. And between the plants and the incense and the foods, eat and drink whatever is safe to eat and drink. Burn whatever is safe to burn. Use as incense or oils or whatever is safe to work with. Like, yeah, talking to neighbors. I know, right? You're like, but my witch told me I have to. But also things like using seed pods and dried leaves and things like that on your altar to show that shift from abundance into that retreat of the energy is really, really potent stuff. Okay. A prayer for you. This is from the incredible Doreen Valiente or Valiant. I love this prayer. Farewell, O sun, ever returning light. The hidden God who ever yet remains now departs to the lands of youth, Tir Nanog, through the gates of death, to dwell enthroned, the judge of gods and folks, the horned leader of the hosts of air. Yet, as he stands unseen without the circle, so dwelleth he within the secret seed, the seed of new reaped grain, the seed of flesh, hidden in earth, the marvelous seed of the stars. In him is life, and life is the light of the people. That which was never born and never dies. Therefore the wise ones weep not, but rejoice. I mean, after the class we just had, think of all the symbolism we just talked about. It's so much in there. Oh my God! It's such a good prayer. I love it. Sorry, but I just screwed up your whole peaceful moment that you were like, I'm really solemn in prayer. Oh no, and now she's screaming again. Okay. Last but not least, let me make sure that that's true. Yeah. Last but not least, some meditations for you. These are inspired by Galen Gillott's book of Hours, Prayers to the Goddess. Really cool book. Highly recommend it. The spiral turns inward. In the name of the elder, see a vision of result and outcome. What is that vision? And you can absolutely use these as meditations during your ritual, journaling prompts, whatever. Passion and fear run deep. How do we find balance between the light and the dark? And you are earth, air, fire, and water. See yourself as a balanced being and write a letter to yourself from that place. My friends, that brings us to the end of the 2021 Mabon live stream. Thank you so much for joining me for this. It has been really, really fun to sit alone in my room and scream at you guys for 2 hours about witchcraft. If you are a person who participates in using substance, this is definitely a season that invites that practice in safe ways, whatever is safe and healthy for you, obviously. If you are a person who does not participate in substance, totally fine. There's lots of other ways of evoking mind-altering experiences for yourself. Spinning is an incredible way of doing it. Sex and sexual contact is a fantastic way. Sensual contact. This is a very sensual season. Rolling down a grassy hill. All of the above. Really, really fantastic. Yeah. Come into this. Come eat some good food. Get smell the soil as it takes back its power. Witness the full moon as the days grow shorter and the nights grow longer. Feel the chill. Thank you so much for joining me. Happy Mabon season. I hope that your harvest is grand. I hope you don't just get what you deserve, but also some good stuff too. All right, my friends. Blessed be. Happy Mabon. Mwah.